What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in this video I'm going to be going through my Week 16 top 18 quarterback rankings. So yesterday I went through the top 36 running backs and wide receivers. In this video I'm going to be focusing on the quarterbacks. If you guys enjoy the video, just do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I'll also have the tight ends and defenses coming out today also. But let's just dive right into the first tier, and I'm going to have two tier 1 quarterbacks. I'm going to start it off with Josh Allen here. I understand he's coming off a game where he wasn't used super heavily, just a very rare game script for this Bills offense. Typically, Josh Allen is asked to pretty much do everything offensively. They really kind of, push some of the workload over to James Cook. I think he only had 7 completions over the entire game, which was very unexpected. I don't think that's going to be something we see every single week. This is a nice matchup here against the Chargers. I think this Bills offense is definitely going to put up points, and Josh Allen on the season has just been a high-end QB1 option, so I don't see why he wouldn't stay here in this tier 1 area. And then after Josh Allen, I have Jalen Hurts. Even though this Eagles offense has kind of struggled and it doesn't seem like Jalen Hurts is playing as well from like a real life NFL perspective, I still think for fantasy he has to be locked in as a high-end QB1. That's the production he's giving you. I also think the matchup is pretty solid here against the Giants. So those are going to be my two top quarterbacks. Some of the other quarterbacks that are typically in this tier have some tough matchups, so I kind of swapped them down to tier 2. Looking at that tier 2 area, I'm going to start it off with Justin Fields. He's one of these quarterbacks that actually gets a favorable matchup here going up against the Cardinals. Didn't have a great fantasy game last week against the Browns, but I think I talked about it in the quarterback start sit video. It was overall just a very unlucky game. He had a beautiful pass to Robert Tonyan, which should have been a really long touchdown. He had 2 interceptions on Hail Marys, which, I mean, that's just tough luck right there, especially when the second one very easily could have turned into a touchdown. So that was a tough matchup against the Browns. When he's been healthy, aside from like the first few games of the season, Justin Fields has been super impressive. So I like him here leading tier 2. Then I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson. He draws a pretty tough matchup here against the 49ers, but I still think he's in that range where he is going to be a high-end QB1 regardless of matchup. Even though I have him in tier 2, I still have a lot of confidence, and if you have him, I would be firing him up unless you have some sort of like crazy quarterback room where you have Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Justin Fields also in there. Still really like Lamar, even in a rough matchup. Then I'm going to have Dak Prescott kind of ended his super hot run that he had over the last like 4 or 5 games. Obviously not a great performance against the Bills. I still think he's a fine candidate to bounce back. I don't think his season is just going to completely fall apart. Really like him here as my QB5. And then wrapping up tier 2, a guy with a very tough matchup, Brock Purdy. He's facing off against Lamar Jackson here. The Ravens have just been very, very tough for opposing fantasy quarterbacks. I believe they have given up the fewest points per game to the quarterback position. So obviously that's going to hurt Purdy a little bit. It's not like he has a smash matchup this week, but I still have confidence that this 49ers offense will be able to score. I mean, you have an offense with Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, a lot of weapons out there. I think both these offenses are going to have some success, but I don't know if they're going to be putting together like crazy ceiling games, which is why I have these quarterbacks in tier 2. Now, shifting into tier 3, I'm going to have 3 tier 3 quarterbacks. I'm going to start it off with Matthew Stafford. He doesn't necessarily have a super strong matchup here going up against the Saints, but he's been playing at a very high level over the last 4 games. With Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua healthy, it seems like this offense is really kind of coming around. So I think he deserves to be ranked here at quarterback 7. Then after Stafford, I'm going to have Trevor Lawrence ranked. Now, there's no guarantee that he's actually going to play in this game. He's going to need to clear concussion protocol, but I just really like this matchup here against this Buccaneers secondary. I think this is a spot where he can definitely take advantage. He may not have Zay Jones. Obviously, Christian Kirk has been out, but I still think like a group of weapons, Calvin Ridley, Evan Ingram, you get some of those younger options to step up. I still think he'll be fine fantasy-wise in a plus matchup. If he's not able to go, then definitely don't consider playing CJ Beathard there. And then the final quarterback in this tier is going to be Patrick Mahomes. You would think this Raiders team would be a really great matchup. It hasn't been pretty much league average. Obviously, this is not like anti-Patrick Mahomes. It just comes down to the current weapons he has offensively. We saw it last week, played pretty well. Still having his receivers kind of cost him in certain spots. So I still have him as like a top 10 guy, but definitely not someone you're firing up as like a high-end QB1 anymore. Now, pivoting into tier 4, these are going to be my back-end QB1s and my high-end QB2s. So we're going to start off this tier with Kyler Murray. even though Kyler's had two kind of somewhat down games back to back, I'm not panicking. I still believe that Kyler Murray is a very strong fantasy quarterback. And if he didn't have actually a pretty tough matchup here against the Bears, he probably would be in tier three. This Bears defense has definitely stepped up, which I do think could limit the ceiling of Kyler this week. Then I'm going to go with Tua here going up against the Cowboys. This is going to be assuming that Tyreek Hill is back. I would expect Tyreek to play. This is a big game here against the Cowboys. So Tua, throwing to Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. I think this is a good spot for him here as like a back-end QB1 play. Then I'm going to have Jared Goff, who is coming off a huge game in Week 15. Really liked his performance in that one. Not a great matchup here against this Vikings defense that has been pretty solid, but I still think he's relevant as like a fringe QB1 play. And then the final two quarterbacks in this tier are going to be Baker Mayfield and Jordan Love. Baker Mayfield is coming off a great performance in Week 15, one of his best games of the season, and I just really like this matchup here against this Jaguars defense. I think this is a spot where if you picked Baker up as like a streaming option, he is definitely someone who's a viable play in your fantasy lineups. And then, like I said, wrapping up this tier with Jordan Love, the Panthers have actually been a pretty tough matchup for opposing quarterbacks, but Jordan Love has been fine. This is pretty much where he's kind of settled in on the season, high-end QB2 production. I think that's where I have him. Obviously, you're hoping that he gets Christian Watson back, but even without Watson, I still think he'll finish, somewhere in this range. Now, pivoting into the fifth and final tier, I'm going to start it off with Geno Smith. Now, there's no guarantee that Geno's actually going to play in this one. We saw Drew Lock fill in, end up being able to take down the Eagles. I think Drew Lock would probably still be a tier fiver. Maybe I drop him a few spots, but whoever's playing quarterback for the Seahawks, I have some level of confidence there going up against the Titans. After Geno, going to go with Joe Flacco. 3 games as a starter, 3 solid fantasy games. Not super scared of this matchup here against the Texans, so I think he's a fine streaming option if you need him. Talked about it last week. Like, he's the guy I'm rolling with in my home league because I had Justin Herbert go down, so I definitely have some level of confidence there. Then I'm going to have Russell Wilson. He's been pretty consistent over the last 5-6 games. Pretty high weekly floor. Hasn't had much of a ceiling. I don't know if he's going to see that ceiling here going up against the Patriots defense. And then the final quarterback here is going to be Jake Browning. And if he had Jamar Chase, he definitely would be ranked a lot higher. Unfortunately, it does not look like he's going to have Chase for this one. Not scared of this Steelers matchup, but just the lack of weapons, I do think kind of gives him a little bit of a hit here. I wanted to just mention 2 guys that I left off. Sam Howell is someone who I viewed as a very confident start heading into Week 15. The fact that he was pulled and Brissett played so well, I understand they're going back to him as their QB1, but I think that just adds a level of risk that I'm not super interested in. Also, the fact that he has a really tough matchup here against the Jets. If he's struggling, just based on the matchup alone, but also has that added in risk of if he is struggling, he might just get yanked. It just seems like his floor is very, very low. And then the other guy was Nick Mullins. He has a solid matchup here. Obviously, really strong weapons with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson. I just don't know how much I trust Nick Mullins in my lineup. I feel like he could be in a similar thing where if he struggles early on, are they going to be opposed to making a quarterback change? We saw them do it with Josh Dobbs a couple weeks ago, so that's why he's just off the list. But if you're super desperate, I get plugging in Nick Mullins. So that's going to wrap it up for my top 18 quarterback rankings for this week, plus I guess a couple of other options. Like I said, tight ends and defense is also coming out today. Any fantasy questions, drop them down below. Thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.